This is 30,000 years old. No arms worth mentioning. No face. Just a stomach, hips, and thighs carved in obsessive detail. For over a century, archaeologists have called her a Venus, a goddess, a fertility charm, a symbol. But strip away the theories, and one detail stays inconvenient. Somebody in the Ice Age carved a body full of fat. We've been told the Ice Age was one long famine. Lean hunters, empty bellies, constant motion. So who was this woman? And why did an artist 30,000 years ago know exactly what stored fat looked like, in enough detail to carve it in limestone? By the end of this video, you'll understand something that sounds backwards. Carrying fat isn't a modern failure of willpower. It's one of the oldest, most successful survival technologies our species ever developed. And the story of how it went from asset to crisis says less about human weakness than it does about how fast our world changed underneath us. To understand why a body could carry fat 30,000 years ago, you have to understand the world it lived in. There were no pantries, no refrigerators, no grocery store open on a bad day. Food arrived in floods and disappeared in droughts, and there was no way to predict which one was coming next. A successful mammoth hunt might feed a group for a week. A berry patch might ripen all at once and rot within days. Then nothing, sometimes for weeks. The gap between abundance and famine wasn't rare. It was the normal rhythm of Paleolithic life. In that world, a body that could only run lean and efficient was fragile. A single bad season could kill it. A body that could bank surplus calories as fat had a buffer, a built-in insurance policy against a future it couldn't predict. 1 kilogram of body fat stores roughly 7,700 calories. That's potentially over a week of energy, held in reserve, ready to be drawn down the moment the environment stopped cooperating. So evolution didn't optimize the human body for a permanent six-pack. It optimized for something more useful, the ability to convert temporary abundance into long-term survival. Fat wasn't the opposite of fitness. In a feast or famine world, fat storage was fitness. Popular culture sells us a very specific image of prehistoric life: constant motion, sprinting after prey, fighting off predators, burning thousands of calories just to make it to sundown. The archaeological and anthropological record tells a different story. Hunter-gatherers moved a lot, but rarely at maximum effort. Most of the day was filled with what researchers call moderate, low-intensity activity: walking, carrying water, gathering firewood, shaping tools by hand. Real physical work, but rarely explosive. Here's the part that tends to surprise people. Field studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups, like the Hadza of Tanzania, who anthropologists have studied for decades as a window into ancient lifestyles, have found their total daily energy expenditure isn't wildly higher than that of a sedentary office worker in an industrialized country. The math doesn't add up the way we assume. Their bodies weren't running a nonstop cardio program. They were running an efficient one. That efficiency mattered because in a world of unpredictable food, burning more energy than necessary was a liability, not a virtue. A body that conserved energy whenever it could, that rested instead of moving without purpose, was a body more likely to survive the next famine. So the lean, hyperactive caveman isn't inaccurate because ancient people were lazy. It's inaccurate because their bodies were optimized for something modern gym culture doesn't reward: doing exactly enough and not 1 calorie more. The Willendorf figure isn't a one-off. Archaeologists have cataloged, well, over 100 similar Venus figurines spread from Western Europe across to Siberia, carved over a span of tens of thousands of years. Scholars still argue about what they meant: fertility symbols, mother goddess figures, self-portraits, even, some argue, a kind of Ice Age body-positive art. The debate isn't settled and probably never will be. But here's what isn't up for debate. Whoever carved these figures had clearly studied a fuller human body up close and considered it worth immortalizing in stone. That's not something you do with a body type you've never seen, or one your culture considered shameful or impossible. Then, around 12,000 years ago, everything about human food changed. The agricultural revolution Let people stop chasing food and start growing it. Grain could be stored. Surplus could be stockpiled. And for the first time in human history, that surplus wasn't shared equally. Hierarchies formed. Some people farmed, hauled, and labored every day. Others, rulers, priests, nobles, didn't have to. They had guaranteed access to food regardless of the season, the harvest, or their own physical effort. In Egypt, Rome, and later dynastic China, the results show up clearly in the art. Tomb paintings and sculptures of pharaohs, officials, and nobles often depict fuller figures, not as a flaw to hide, but as a signal to display. In a world where most people were one bad harvest from hunger, carrying visible weight was a receipt. It said, "I have never missed a meal, and I never will." Fat had officially become a status symbol, not despite scarcity, because of it. So if fat storage was such a useful survival tool, why wasn't everyone in the ancient world carrying extra weight? Because it came with a cost. Extra fat made hunting harder. It made you slower, less agile, worse at shedding body heat in the middle of a chase. In the wild, an evolutionary advantage only stays an advantage if the trade-off doesn't kill you first. Nature kept the reward on a short leash. Which brings us to honey. To a Paleolithic forager, raw honey was about as close to a jackpot as food got, a rare, ultra-dense hit of pure sugar, worth risking a swarm of furious bees to obtain. Our brains evolved a very specific, very intense reward response to that kind of find. Rare, dense, dangerous, and absolutely worth it. That reward circuitry never got the memo that anything changed. Today, that same intensity of reward sits in aisle 4 of your local supermarket. No bees, no danger, no rarity, just $2 and a 5-second walk. The wiring in our brains that once needed to be intense, because the reward was so hard to get, is now firing at full strength for something that requires almost no effort at all. That mismatch between an ancient reward system and a modern environment of effortless abundance is what scientists call an evolutionary mismatch. And it doesn't just apply to honey. It applies to fat, salt, sugar, and nearly every hyperpalatable food modern industry has learned to manufacture at scale. So, did ancient humans get fat? Yes. Whenever their environment allowed it, their bodies did exactly what millions of years of evolution had trained them to do: store the surplus, prepare for the famine, survive. Obesity today isn't a malfunction, and it isn't a moral failing. It's an ancient survival program, still running exactly as designed, inside a world that finally, for the first time in human history, stopped testing it. Our biology didn't change. Our opportunity did. The next time you open that fridge at midnight, remember, you're not broken and you're not weak. You're the first human in roughly 300,000 years who never has to wonder where the next meal is coming from. Your body just hasn't caught up to that fact yet, and understanding that difference might be the first step to working with your biology instead of against it.